It is a very good morning to you all, and welcome to the Breakfast Club right here on Asake. My name is Fungai Mawada. What may come as a shock to many is that Bulawayo was once voted as the cleanest city in Africa. Yes, not many years ago, that was a fact. But today we live in a city that many people are really disappointed to live in, and many look down upon as saying that it is absolutely polluted with dirt no matter where you walk. And to help me talk more on this matter, I'm joined by environmentalists as well as the founder of Umhlaba Waste Management, that is Qinisani Ndlovu. Good morning and welcome to the Breakfast Club.
Thank you, Fungai, and welcome to your viewers. Thank you for having me this morning.
All right, so maybe just to start off this conversation, tell us about Umhlaba Waste Management. How did you start up with that concept?
Well, basically, it was in 2014. I've always been a very smart person, first and foremost. They say charity begins at home, so it really started at home. So in 2014, I came up with this idea. I parked the bus and decided maybe I need to acquire some qualifications to get further expertise in that field. So then I proceeded to Lupana State University. That's where I attained my degree in urban management, and I did quite well in waste management. So this is where the love for dealing with waste actually really beat me, and that's where it started. In 2016, 2017, I proceeded and graduated with a degree. And in 2019, I began extensive research into basically what pollution is, what littering is, the psychology of a waste producer. Cities, as we know them, are engines of development, and they are bound to create waste. So this is where we gathered a lot of research. And in 2022, this year, that's when I executed the plan, and we just started production this year. It's a very young startup, 7 months old, and we are what we call moving mountains in the field of waste management. So this is us in a nutshell.
Okay, wonderful. So maybe my first question is Bulawayo on its way to clean city status based on your experience as someone who has been in waste management for all of these years?
Yeah, I mean, yes, definitely. I mean, we are on the right path. But then I would like to critique probably maybe the programs that we have. I mean, Bulawayo City Council recently went on a spring cleaning exercise. I like to call those programs static because there's not much movement after that. Of course, yes, in the short term, the outcomes are positive. But then in the long term, when we look at what the Bulawayo City Council is saying, they envisage themselves or ourselves as being a world-class city by 2024. I would like to think we're falling behind, and it's really we are on the right path, but it might be a case of not reaching our goal at the end of the day with the pace and then the current setup that is there in as far as waste management is concerned in the city.
All right, so where are we missing the plot as a city, as residents as well within the city of Bulawayo?
I mean, firstly, I would like to point the finger at myself and maybe fellow residents. We are not really much active in the terms of trying to support council. It's a case of city council also not being there for us when we actually need them. So it's a strained relationship, and there's the environment that is suffering at the present moment. We are failing to mend our relationships, and basically pollution is just a mirror image of how the outstrained that relationship is. There is no working together from ourselves. We're not proactive when it comes to waste management, and we look at cleanliness at a personal level. It's rather questionable from my point of view. I stand to be corrected, but it's rather questionable. And when you look at city council, I think their plates are full. They need our help. We need them. They need us, and this is where we find ourselves.
All right. So I'm sure obviously you've seen the situation in Ulo Pegula Street as well as Sixth Avenue, where there's there's street vendors, there's people who are selling things, there's so much litter literally just parked there. And of course the city has been embarking, like you said, on a spring cleaning week this entire week. How do we balance environmental awareness while making sure that despite the economic hardships that we have, people actually make a living at the same time?
Yes, I mean that's a good question. Look, when you look, Fungai, when you look at a person who's trying to feed their family, you take away their bread and butter, they are bound to be aggrieved. And with that anger, when you begin to stir it up, this is where we lead to strained relationships. I would like to believe that people are not foolish or stupid. Wherever they come from, their place is clean, right? So things to do with disrespect of the public space, right? It's a lack of lack of a sense of ownership for that public space. And you're not talking about public spaces. I think we're doing ourselves a disservice. I mean, in reference to COVID-19 that struck 2 years back, I mean, countries like the United States, France, England, when hospitals were brimming with patients and they're full to the brim, they resorted to public spaces, right? Setting up tents, camps, treatment areas. This was done in parking lots, parks, city parks, and basically open spaces. They were able to achieve this because the spaces were clean already. Now you take that context and you try and plug it into the Zimbabwean context. We first have to clean the area, and I mean, people are dying and we're trying to clean the area. I mean, vectors, airborne diseases. I mean, it's just catastrophic at the end of the day. So we're doing ourselves a disservice. But then again, we need to look at our zoning laws, and we need to revisit our urban planning. I mean, what basically does it entail? You cannot have a situation where you have got grocery shops lining up, 6, 7 of them, and their packaging is plastic, and then you expect to have a clean environment on the outside. So it really has to start with the person. And I think city council is not really doing themselves justice, because when you're battling pollution or littering, it's not really, the fight is not really on the ground, but it's mental, right? You're fighting the mind, right? The psychology of a waste producer, like I always say. And I just feel like we need to better understand that person. You know, I've seen it in I'm sure you've also seen it in town. Vendors being harassed. I mean, it's not a pretty sight from an ethical point of view, from a human being point of view. It's not really ethical. And I would like to see city council engaging vendors, getting them to understand basically who they are, what drives them to be on the pavement, what drives them to wake up in the morning. And then basically you can then try and have a conversation about what we can do about the immediate environment that you're actually occupying. So that would be a starting point. And in terms of trying to look, the economy has been in the doldrums for quite a while. We cannot then place all our problems on the economy. Some of those things do not take funding. It's all about the will in the first place, it's all about the will and the ability to implement, take action, and meet set objectives.
Okay, you spoke about the psychology of a waste producer. What is the psychology of a waste producer?
You've got to understand that what drives me to litter. There are many facets, many factors that really drive someone to litter. I could just like seeing someone suffer, or just like seeing someone pick that up on me. You know, it's an issue of dominance, an issue of trying to control the narrative, the setting, the power, right? That is those are some of the leading factors in terms of why people litter. Secondly, it's just second nature. I'll give you an example. A gentleman that I studied and observed in Munch and Sip, right? So the gentleman buys a hot dog, right? All these sauces are flowing on his hand. He's done. Looks around, nobody's watching, but from a distance I'm watching. He takes his beer, he washes his hands, right? He washes his hands. He looks around, nobody's watching. Wipes it on the on his pants, right? And then from there he goes and hugs his friend with the same hand that was washed by a beer. So that's the psychology of a waste. And then you begin to ask yourself, why would he do that? You know, he's used to it, right? It's something that is second nature. He doesn't see any wrong in it. So basically, we could go on and on about some of the. It's all about trying to deduce the situation and see what exactly leads a certain person to behave in a certain way.
Wow, very interesting. And then I was going through your Twitter profile, and you're speaking about how the tinkering of our transport system may have led to an increase of waste in the CBD. Please explain this in detail and how we can make a difference or use that as a way of making a difference within Bulawayo.
Yeah, I mean, when these Zupcos were introduced, I think the price was so low that everybody was actually got a chance to. I met certain friends from Elokshin where I grew up, and you know they were rushing for his Zupco, and they said to me, "I know, put us siya ngena namhle town, yabo." And it dawned on me that these are people that had spent probably who could go for a month 2-3 months without even setting
foot in town.
Foot in town, right? So the transportation of people, when you migrate people, we by nature we are waste producers. So when you move people from point A to point B, you need to have point B has to have plans in place to actually accommodate those people. So the number of people that we had from coming, not even counting the number of people that were coming from outside the city, but then locally. And this is the CBD, right? We had a certain we had a certain number of people, or a certain we had a certain number of people that were coming to town on a regular occasion, and these are people going to look for work, and so you can imagine the number of it increased, right? Now we look at the receptacles that are actually in the CBD. Were they able to contain the number of people? Was City Council actually ready to accommodate the number of people that were actually flowing in from all the surrounding areas that are surrounding Bulawayo, right? So the amount of waste that we see accumulated over years, right, over months, over weeks, over days. So it's not something that it's just a heap that's accumulated over. And if you take some time, Fungai, and you drive around or you just walk around about maybe around 11, 12, this is midnight, right? There are buses that actually rank and they travel throughout the night, right? So people are buying takeaways. Obviously, they're traveling. You know, you're hungry, you're buying your food. How do they dispose? Nobody's policing that. I mean, it's in the night and nobody's even there. Nobody's even looking, right? So this is how our transport system has contributed to actually our CBD getting to where they are. May you please repeat the last question?
No, I was just asking you, how can we make a difference?
I think it has to start with an individual, right? It has to start with an individual. But then when we then want to make, in the short term, it has to start with an individual. But then in the long term, I think Bulawayo City Council has to be very, very, very strong in terms of setting up certain programs that are, for an example, I mean, why would you have a vendor who's sitting next to waste and they're not doing anything about it, right? Why don't we have a charted dialogue about them, who they are, check their details. I mean, they are there almost on a daily basis. Check their details, right? So if he or she is not able to keep the area clean, then you put a certain tax on them, or probably at the end of the month that you can attach to probably their rates at the end of the month. So those are some of off the top of my head, those are some of the suggestions that I would have in terms of trying to clear up the CBD.
Okay, and then my last question refers to Bulawayo's biggest event. So I'd like to think the biggest social event that happened, which was the Munch and Sip. I personally attended the event and I was astounded by the number of people that were there and the amount of litter, the amount of dust and dirt. Like, it was a whole experience altogether. And you had the task of cleaning up after everyone. Could you please run us through that experience, how it was, and the results in that activity, particularly looking at how the event was held at Matopos, and Matopos is a rural area. There are lots of, livestock in that area, cows and goats and the likes, which often chew on waste matter as well. So how was that experience for you?
No, I think for us, I mean, the event was on a Sunday, but for us, it started on a Friday, with the pre-planning. And of course, we really want to acknowledge that we did not anticipate the number of people that are actually streaming into the area. That is something that we overlooked. But we know that we're swimming in the deep end. This was something that was never done in Bulawayo, something that we pioneered. So we are trying to introduce a concept called waste event management, right? Where you actually are managing the waste as the event is going on, right? To limit probably the repercussions after the event is done, right? So a lot of these curators, a lot of these content creators, a lot of these event planners have a challenge when they're dealing with waste. So Umhlaba Waste is really trying to plug into that problem by offering that solution. So we traveled to Sailing Club. A week earlier, we had gone into partnership with Zim Parks as well as Modern Magnet, right? So these are the guys that we partnered with. Then we had heard about Munch and Sip. We thought let us not pass this opportunity, right? So we started by basically organizing ourselves into a team of 8, right? And like I was saying off air, we had a budget of $200, right? This was for a period of 4 days. So this was to dispel the notion that funding can be tied to failures of initiatives. Waste management initiatives can be tied to lack of funding, which is not true, really. So we may not have achieved all our objectives because of a lack of resources, both technical and the financial, right? So we managed to collect waste, and what we're really targeting was recyclable waste, right? So some of the waste that was there was mainly organic, right? You got your food, your leftovers, which is another area that needs to be exploited when you look at composting. It's another form of recycling, right? It's not really plastic that is only recyclable, right? There's composting as well. So glass was also present, cardboards, paper, and I mean, plastic is very light, and it is the most common kind of packaging that you have. So we managed to collect that, and this was when we had the 3 phases of an event: bump in, the actual event, and bump out, right? And we couldn't even walk around during the actual event and the bump outs, right? So we just let the waste be, and the following morning, that's where we went back on site. We started collecting the waste. I mean, it took us about 4 to 5 hours to try and collect the waste, and we need to acknowledge as well that we didn't collect all the waste that was there. Some of it was actually taken care of by national parks, and they were able to dispose it. So their disposal mainly involves transportation from the sailing club to the landfill. And another one of the unsustainable disposal methods that are at our disposal. But then, unfortunately, this is where we find ourselves as African countries, right? So that is how we went about it. After the collection, we managed to collect around about 72 kgs of recyclable plastic. But as we went through, when we were going through the sorting process, some of it was spoiled, right? Especially foodstuffs. As I had said, it's a startup. We don't have the necessary technical expertise. We really want to take care of our health as well. We do not know what kind of waste we're dealing with in terms of contamination and the contamination levels. So we managed to collect 72 kgs from the event. And what we resolved to do, as you were present, I'm sure you struggled to get sitting areas, right? So in partnership with Sailing Club, we are, through our recycling unit, we are trying to remanufacture or recycle the plastic into sitting areas, so that the next time everyone who's there can actually read a story, because what we're selling here is a story, right? Of the plastic on a festival on the 28th of August. This was what was produced, and this is the end result after Umhlaba Waste has taken care of the waste.
Oh, wow. Absolutely amazing, Qinisani. And we absolutely admire your work. I mean, like, personally, I've been seeing some of your key holders and I'm like, oh, that's very nice and stuff like that. So it's really amazing to see the work you're doing. And for a business that started this year, it's absolutely inspiring. And of course, we wish you all the best in your endeavors. And thank you so much for shedding gems in terms of e-waste management and what we can do to better the city that we're in as Bulawayo. So thank you so much for joining us today on the Breakfast Club. And to you at home, I'm sure you was very clear about some of the things that we can do as people to make sure that our environment is clean. And like he said, it all begins with our minds, with our mindset, with our psychology when it comes to making sure we keep our environment clean and making sure that Bulawayo gets that world-class status as one of the cleanest cities in Africa. And of course, after this break, we'll be joined in studio by Tonderai Shoko to talk more about whether Bulawayo can ever attain world-class status when it comes to cleanliness.
We might be picking this litter, but what we need to do from today is to clean our minds towards litter. Because when I look at everyone here, I don't think they've ever dumped litter on the ground there. But there are some people with that attitude. So we need to work together to change that mentality.
While Council has been trying its level best to ensure that refuse is collected on a weekly basis in the residential areas, the city center has been most affected. Today we kick off this big spring cleaning week in a bid to rid the city of dumping hotspots which have been affecting us. As a city, we have mapped 35 hotspots within the central business district, which are an eyesore and have been filled with litter. This, however, does not mean that other places are not important, as we will also cover these in the week ahead and the following weeks after this big spring campaign.
Ngikhangela ukuthi nxa siklina la izigubhu eziningi ziphenduka zibe ngamachemba. It's an embarrassment to the city. Akusiphathi uma kuyiculture esikhona mhlawumbe abadala abanjengabo his worship the mayor ekehlale labantu abatsha phansi ebabonise sizadinga abadala abazancedisa.
Oh yeah, konakele phina we Bulawayo ngimthanda yo ingcekeza yagcwala idolobho lonke kanti kwenze njani Bulawayo webaphathi bedolobho lathula lithulele nina
Welcome back to the second segment of the Breakfast Club. We were talking about whether Bulawayo can ever attain world-class city standards in terms of cleanliness. And as you know, the city of Bulawayo embarked on the Spring Cleaning Week this week, where residents and various stakeholders have been invited to do their part in making sure the city is clean. And to help me talk more about this, I am joined by renowned environmentalist Tonderai Shoko. Welcome to the Breakfast Club.
Thank you, Fungai, for the invitation.
All right, so you've now done over 1,000 plus days of your cleaning exercise and the likes. How has that been going so far for you?
It's been going pretty well, I must say. Unfortunately, we had a break during COVID, so we are slowly trying to get back onto our feet and to continue with the plans we had before then. So we are slowly getting back on our feet. So it's going well. I should say it's going well.
All right. So in line with that, is Bulawayo on the path to clean city status in your view?
Okay. I should say that before I really get deep into that, I would like to mention that during COVID, we actually noticed that the city was clean because there was no activity. Right? So now, coming back to your question, we have noticed that people have lost the culture of cleanliness. And I should say that the city is now overcrowded in certain areas. Our biggest worry, Skip Lawyer Clean, has always been 6th Avenue. From where it starts up to Ekotini, it's a mess because you find that that's where we've got the highest foot traffic. And that's where we've got the most people with vending stalls. So it actually gets worse after hours. If you drive up there, you'll actually notice that people actually set up their vending stalls on the road. So the culture of cleanliness with the people doing the vending is totally not there, unfortunately. And there's a point that has been raised also on 6th Avenue, which is quite disturbing. We've got so many people doing business there, but we do not have toilets for them. So now our sanitary lanes are now being used as toilets. And sadly, some people are relieving themselves in the plastic water bottles and they just throw them on the ground. So it's quite sad.
Yeah, it is a sight for sore eyes. And what are your sentiments in regards to the Bulawayo Spring Cleaning Week, which was launched, of course, this week by the City Council to try and alleviate some of the symptoms that we're experiencing now in regards to the cleanliness of the city?
I must say it's very commendable. We have never had this in Bulawayo, and it's something good. It's a big step they've taken to encourage everyone that you need to do this. As the city fathers, they've taken a big step in being the role model in the cleanliness. So this week, I'm happy that they'll be going around the whole CBD and they'll have a chance to interact with people. And I hope they take advantage of this to actually find out how they can work hand in hand with the residents who have businesses in town and residents who come into town to get services and products on how they can also contribute to a better city. So it's a big step. I'm really hoping that after this week, the city council will actually consider having such initiatives more than once a year. Hopefully even 3 times a year or 4 times a year. It will go a long way. But what it is we would expect the city council to have such a big drive on a daily basis, all being equal. Yes.
That would be amazing, actually.
Yes.
And, like I said at the beginning, that you're a notable environmentalist. Where are we missing the plot as residents when it comes to cleanliness of the city? And where are we getting it right in terms of trying to keep our city clean?
All right. I would love to say that it's not every resident from Bulawayo who's a litter bag. We've got some people who are doing so much great work, but they do not get coverage or get to be known. I would like to clap hands for them. They obviously know themselves. Then now, as I indicated, it's the culture. We've lost the culture. You can get into town, buy a banana. You don't see a bin, the next thing you throw it on the ground. You are mostly concentrated on what you're working on or where you have to go to. You're not worried about who's going to pick up the litter or how it will affect the next person. So the culture has totally diminished. We have now put more effort in actually educating children, the future. At least we know that our future of, our children growing up will have a better mindset, a better culture they would have adopted from learning. From what I understand is in the 90s, mid-90s up till the early 2000s, there was intensive education in schools on littering and not littering. There were actually schools, competitions, but now it's sad to know that most schools do not have environmental clubs. They do not educate children on the effects of littering, climate change. It's quite sad. We've got a handful of schools which do that. So I would like to encourage schools to actually have environmental clubs whereby they will actually make sure that students know what's going on so that our future will be better. And once you've got that environmental club, it will make a big impact on the whole school. They will have initiatives that they'll do in the school, and that will send a message to every other student. Yes.
Okay, absolutely. And you highlighted earlier on about the state of the roads in terms of 6th Street as well as Lobengula Street. And we can't avoid the fact that, our economy is not what it used to be or what way it should be rather. And people are literally trying to make a living. How do you balance environmental awareness while making sure that people continue to make a living within the streets of Bulawayo?
Okay, for a start, people who are actually vending on the streets, I'm sure the city council would like to say it's illegal. There is no way we are going to wake up tomorrow and these people will not be on the streets. They need to survive. So now the city council needs to engage these people and find a way forward. Fine, you're doing your business here, but please make sure that you put your litter in that corner, and the city council can work on doing maybe overnight collections, because if you have a standoff and you're going to be chasing people, it will not work. You need to engage them and find a way forward. You'll be surprised that the people who are actually vending will have better ideas to share to the council if they're well engaged. So it's the approach. Yes.
It's all about the approach. And then recently I was going through your social media and I saw that Girls College, CBC, as well as Dominican Convent had a successful cleanup within the Centenary Park, and you invited to speak to these students as well. How important is it for you to have such engagements with the future, as you rightfully said?
It's very important because now I was quite impressed because all along after COVID, we did not see much activity from schools happening, but I'm happy that the 3 schools have got active environmental clubs. I got to share with them my journey on how Keep Life Clean started, what it's been through and where it's going. I also got to share with them the importance of tree planting. I'm actually going to do some tree planting at all the schools with the students through their invitation. it was an eye-opener for them also to go to the park, get a feel of the park, get to understand how badly it's been littered, why it's being littered. So more research can also be done from our children, and they can share it to us. Yes.
Okay, so now, like I mentioned at the beginning, that you're now on 1,700 plus days with your cleanup campaign. And when you reflect back from day one to where you are now, how has your growth game been, and what is the future like for Tonderai Shoko and his campaigns in making sure that Bulawayo is literally kept clean?
Going back to the beginning of Keep Bulawayo Clean, it's not about Tonderai Shoko, no. It's about the environment. I'm happy to see that many people are now coming up with different initiatives, tree planting, recycling. It's quite encouraging. The more we have different people with the same vision, we will achieve our city status of being one of the cleanest cities in Africa again. So it's moving well, but we need to do lots of education. That's where we need to really move on. From our children in schools, adults, vending, business owners, we need to educate everyone, and we need to make sure that we spread out that message on a daily basis. Yes, we need to be more aggressive.
Tonderai, thank you so much for joining us on the Breakfast Club, and we wish you all the best with your initiatives and continue to do the good work in making sure that Bulawayo is kept clean.
Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you so much to you at home for joining us on the Breakfast Club. Make sure you join us again tomorrow, same time, as we continue to raise awareness around these issues, which are affecting us on a daily basis. And remember to like and to follow us on all our social media platforms, website, ZW on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, as well as on Twitter. From myself, Fungai, and the team behind the scenes, goodbye.
Asiphatheni kuhle idolobho lethu.